Good evening. Hope everybody's doing okay today. Happy Monday. It's almost 5:30 p.m. Starting to get dark here in Central Virginia. And I decided I'm going to go out for a little evening walk. But anyway, wanted to just run through something that was on my mind. Right now, the whole social media thing is all about the situation in Minneapolis where the ICE agent shot the woman in the car who was trying to get away, but he may have thought she was trying to run him over. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but two things can be true at the same time. She could have been trying to leave, and he could have feared for his life. This is going to have to play its way out in court, administrative hearings, a judge and jury, and whatnot. I suppose it's going to be ruled as a valid shooting, but I don't know. That's just speculation. But the other thing that's been in the news is Greenland. I think Donald Trump understands the strategic, economic, and I guess you could call it the resources of Greenland, how important it is, and the location. As it stands now, Greenland, I guess you could say it's a territory of Denmark. They've historically been allied with Denmark for a long, long time. Trump, his rhetoric is not very helpful. He's saying, oh, we're going to make it a state, or he's his own worst enemy. He doesn't know how to articulate things. What they ought to consider doing is making Greenland a sovereign protectorate, which means that the Greenlanders and the Inuit people don't have any, they're not going to be forced to become Americans, and they don't have to be Danes either. They can be their own people and have a symbiotic relationship with the United States and the West. Basically, Denmark is not going to be able to protect Greenland. They just don't have the military to do it. I've been to Denmark twice. I loved it. It's a beautiful country, amazing people, and everybody seems so damn tall too. But anyway, they don't have the wherewithal to protect Greenland. The United States arguably does. Greenland is also not a member of NATO. So if something happens to Greenland, it doesn't invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter because they're not part of NATO, just like Ukraine is not part of NATO, as much as people would want it to be. So what do? Well, a lot of minerals up there. I think if Donald Trump, he may have already done this. I don't know. I don't know what to think about him sometimes. At times it seems like he's on point. Other times it just seems like he's like an 8-year-old who ate too much sugar and running around the house and you can't get him to go to bed. But nevertheless, if Greenland is a protectorate of the United States, it could be to our benefit and theirs. And if Donald Trump can sit down with the leaders of Greenland, along with Marco Rubio, who is sometimes seems smarter than Trump, sit down with Marco Rubio and the Greenland people and just say, hey, listen, you can join some kind of alliance with us. We already have a military base there. It's called Thule. Well, it's called something else that starts with a P, but it used to be Thule, Thule. There's an Air Force base there, I believe. But, it's important for NORAD. It's important for North American defense. And you tell the Greenland people, you say, hey, you can come and play ball with us and work out a deal, and you can always say no, or you can wait until China or Russia decide that it's a big enough prize, and they won't let you say no if they decide they're going to act aggressively against it. So that's something that they ought to keep in mind. A lot of moving parts going on, and you've got the situation in Iran. The people are standing up against the government, and apparently several hundred have been killed. Is it time for the mullahs to be overthrown? I don't know. Maybe. But a lot of The bizarre thing is there's a lot of people in Iran who have a kinship with the Jews in Israel. And there are a lot of people in Israel who love the Iranians. I saw a video on YouTube where there were Iranian people and Jewish people in New York City, and they were flying each other's flags, and they were giving each other hugs and shaking hands and basically sort of having a picnic out in the street. I found that to be surprising because the media would have you believe that they're all bitter enemies of each other. But there's a lot of weird things going on in the world right now, and all of a sudden, with the thing in Minnesota, you don't hear much about Venezuela. Well, you know, people are saying Trump's going to take over Venezuela for the oil. Trump doesn't need, well, the United States doesn't need the oil in Venezuela. That'd be like Saudi Arabia invading Egypt to get sand. But you know who does want to have a bigger presence in Venezuela? Russia and China. They would love to get their hands on South America. Right now, Trump is exercising what might be called the Monroe Doctrine, or a modern, the Donroe Doctrine, the Trump Doctrine, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, it's reducing the influence of our adversaries in the Western Hemisphere is not a bad thing. Now, you could take issue with the way he's going about it, for sure. But there's something to be said for at least having the desire to keep things out of our own backyard, because Russia and China have very powerful militaries. They are an adversary of the United States. They're not an enemy, they're an adversary. And what Trump did in Venezuela might have stymied efforts of the Russians and the Chinese to make inroads into South America. So, you know, he could have put the kibosh on some of their agenda. I don't know. We're not privy to a lot of what's going on, but there's just things going on in the world right now, and I think Minneapolis stole all the oxygen out of the room. I think too many people are hung up on that, and we're just going to have to let that play out. But there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the world. I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, but I really hope that Trump has some smart people negotiating with him. Because whether you love Trump or whether you hate the guy, you have to realize that there are potential long-term ramifications of all of this going on. And can you imagine what it would do for not only the United States, but the Western Hemisphere, if we could get a stable government in Venezuela and they would embrace capitalism and make it welcoming for money to be invested there? Holy smoke. That would not only help the economy of Venezuela, it would help Colombia, it would help Mexico, it would probably help a lot of the countries in Central America. And when people trade with each other and engage in commerce, they're less likely to go to war. You know, if you could, let's say capitalism came to Cuba. Let's say that Raul Castro and the regime down there fell and they embraced capitalism. Imagine the money and the investment that would, not only from the United States, but everywhere else, that would just pour into Cuba. Think of, I don't think it's going to happen, but look at the Gaza Strip. That's prime area on the Mediterranean Sea. That land is probably worth millions of dollars a square foot. Well, I'm exaggerating, but if they could just get rid of the terrorists there and build like hotels, resorts, beachfront resorts, casinos. I mean, capitalism, if people could just get rid of this religious fundamentalism and the hatred and the desire to be terrorists and everything else, there's no telling what some of these countries could do. Some of the countries that have the worst economies and the most terrorism and where they're always in a state of war, these are places where they don't embrace capitalism. They don't have free markets. And some of them, they have miles of coastline. They have abundant natural resources. Some of these places, even you look at Mexico, tons of coastline, more oil than they can ever use, a long growing season, fertile soil, a long you know, forest, mountains, good infrastructure, good roads. I've been to Mexico 3 times as an adult. I was there as a kid before too, but they've got better roads than some states in the U.S. You know, a hardworking population. It's just they have all that corruption. If they could get, man, I want what's best for people, and it's like they've got to see the light, and some of them do, but not enough of them. So anyway, I'm going to leave this here. I've gone on long enough, but there's a lot of moving parts. Things going on right now that are pretty weird, but we'll figure it out. Everybody have a good night.